Why do so many leaders feel stuck, even when they are working harder than ever? After more than 14 years working as a consultant, data scientist, and now a leadership coach, I've seen this pattern again and again with managers who are doing everything right on paper. In this video, I will walk through 4 growth laws from John C. Maxwell that explain why capable leaders plateau and how to start growing intentionally again. I've read a few books on leadership and personal development, but this one stands out. Honestly, I'll put this in my top 5 personal growth books of all time. And the reason is very simple. The laws are deceptively simple. You read them and think that is obvious, but when you actually apply them, they become incredibly powerful. As I was reading this book, every chapter felt like it was describing a pattern I had earlier experienced myself or observed in leaders around me. So today, I want to do something a little different. Instead of summarizing the entire book chapter by chapter, I want to do what I normally do in coaching conversations. We will start with the big picture of the 15 laws, and then we'll dive deep into 4 laws I believe are especially relevant for leaders today. Maxwell's central argument in this book is very simple. Growth does not happen automatically. Most people assume growth comes with time, but Maxwell says something very confronting. Most people age, but very few people actually grow. Growth is not accidental. Growth is intentional. And just like physics or economics, growth follows laws. When you understand those laws and apply them consistently, growth becomes predictable instead of accidental. The journey begins internally. Growth starts when someone stops drifting and becomes intentional about improvement. But intentional growth requires self-awareness. You must understand your strength, your passion, your potential. And Maxwell introduces something called the law of the mirror, which basically says your life rarely rises above the value you place on yourself. Then he introduces another powerful idea. Experience alone doesn't create wisdom. Evaluated experience does. Growth happens when we pause, reflect, and learn from what we've gone through. From there, Maxwell moves into the practical side of growth. Transformation doesn't happen through bursts of motivation. It happens through daily habit. Small disciplines repeated every day shape your life more than rare moments of intensity. Then he talks about environment. Just like coal burns harder when surrounded by fire, people grow faster when they are surrounded by others who challenge and inspire them. But growth is never comfortable. Pain, setbacks, and uncertainty are not interruptions to growth. They are part of the process. Character and resilience determine how far success can actually go. Then Maxwell introduces one of my favorite metaphors in the book, the rubber band. A rubber band only becomes useful when it is stretched. In the same way, potential only becomes useful when we stretch beyond comfort. As we grow, Maxwell also highlights something difficult. Growth requires trade-offs. You cannot move toward a bigger future while clinging to a comfortable present. And eventually, Maxwell ends with the most powerful perspective of all. The purpose of growth is not just personal success. The higher level of growth is contribution. When we grow, we gain the ability to lift others, create opportunities, and improve the communities around us. By the way, if these kinds of leadership conversations are helpful to you, consider subscribing and sharing this with someone who may be stepping into leadership right now. And if you'd like to evaluate your own leadership foundation, you can download the Leader Identity Audit in the link below. Now, I want to focus on 4 laws that I see showing up repeatedly in my coaching conversations with leaders. Those laws are: number 1, the law of intentionality. Number 2, the law of consistency. Number 3, the law of environment. And number 4, The law of the rubber band. Let's start with the first one, the law of intentionality. Let me describe a situation I see often in leadership coaching. Someone tells me, I've been in my management role for 3 years. I hate my KPIs, I'm busy every day, and I don't feel like I'm actually becoming a better leader. They are successful on paper, but internally, they feel like they are drifting. Maxwell calls this the opposite of intentional growth, and it is surprisingly common. Many professionals work extremely hard, but they are not intentionally developing who they are becoming. Their schedule is full of activity, but their growth is happening accidentally. And Maxwell makes a powerful statement. Growth doesn't just happen because you work hard. If you don't intentionally design your growth, you may repeat the same year of experience 10 times. That insight alone changed how I approach my own development. Because leadership growth is not about just working harder. It is about becoming the next best version of yourself. Here is one simple exercise from this law. I call it the gap audit. Identify the gap between what you know and what you actually practice. Maybe it is giving difficult feedback, strategic thinking, coaching your team. Pick one leadership skill, then schedule 30 minutes this week purely to study and practice it. Law number 2, the law of consistency. Here is another pattern many leaders experience. They read a leadership book, attend a conference, come back inspired. And then on Monday morning, they announce a major initiative, a new framework, a new strategy, a new culture push. The team gets excited, but 2 weeks later, it disappears. And over time, the team starts thinking, this is just another flavor of the month. The problem is not motivation. The problem is consistency. Maxwell says something extremely simple, but powerful. Motivation gets you started. Consistency is what actually produces growth. Leadership credibility is not built in big speeches. It is built in daily habit. Small disciplines, repeated consistently, build trust. One powerful idea from this law is the 1% rule. Instead of trying to overhaul culture in a week, focus on 1% improvement every week. Consistency builds credibility. Third law, the law of environment. This law is extremely important because even talented leaders struggle when they are in the wrong environment. I've heard leaders say things like, I love my work, but the culture here is toxic. Or my boss refuses to grow and it is starting to affect my own mindset. You cannot plant a seed in acidic soil and expect it to thrive. The same principle applies to people. You can be motivated, you can be disciplined, but if your environment consistently pulls you down, eventually it affects you. Growth requires a growth environment. One exercise I recommend is this. Audit the 5 people you spend the most time with professionally. Are they encouraging growth, expanding your thinking, challenging your ideas, or are they constantly complaining, coasting, and avoiding responsibility? If your environment isn't stretching you, you must intentionally create one. Find mentors, peer groups, learning communities. In fact, join this community. Your growth deserves the right environment. Last but not least, the 4th law is the law of the rubber band. This might be one of my favorite ideas in the book. Maxwell says potential works like a rubber band. A rubber band only becomes useful when it is stretched. Without tension, it does nothing. And this explains something many leaders experience later in their careers. They finally reach the role they wanted, the salary they worked for, the stability they pursued, and suddenly the hunger disappears. Comfort sets in, but comfort has a hidden danger. Comfort slowly leads to stagnation, and stagnation eventually leads to irrelevance. Growth requires tension between where you are and who you could become. Here is a simple challenge. Define your next. If your current goal no longer stretches you, set a new one that makes you slightly uncomfortable. If the goal doesn't make you nervous, it probably isn't big enough. Stretch is where growth happens. When you look at these 4 laws together, something powerful emerges. Many leaders struggle not because they lack talent, but because they are missing one of these 4 elements. Intentional growth, consistent habits, a growth environment, and a meaningful stretch. When those 4 elements align, growth accelerates. Let me end with a question I often ask in leadership coaching, and I want you to think about it for a moment. What is a goal you have been avoiding because it requires a version of leadership you haven't mastered yet? Now, here is the real question. Are you willing to trade your comfort for your potential? And if you'd like to evaluate your own leadership foundation, you can download the Leader Identity Audit in the link below. Because growth is not automatic, it is intentional. And when you understand the laws that govern it, growth stops being accidental. It becomes a choice. If you are just stepping into a leadership role and struggling with trust issues with your team, click here. Take care. God bless.